we're running again on part 2 of needing a support group, and we're turning now to the scripture with Jesus. Did Jesus need a support group? Yes, he did. And we'll use a couple of examples from it in order to establish it. Because you need to be convinced that there's nothing wrong with you if you need a support group. That it's not that you're a bumblebrain, you're not a nitwit, you're not short on intellect. It's none of these things. It's needed. And if Jesus needed a support group, guess who else needs a support group? Oh, you guessed it. Oh, Bob, really, you too? Oh, you bet. You're a doctor of psychology. I mean, you were licensed by the state of New York to do thus and so, and you're telling me you needed a support group. You betcha. You bet I did. And so does every person who comes into this world in a human state. We are lost. Now let's look at Jesus. Jesus has appeared before John the Baptist, and he asks him to be baptized. Support group needed some kind of an additional external support in order to begin the commencement of his ministry, of his mission. And he gets baptized. And he goes out into the desert after that, and you see him wrestling with his mind. Now it points out that he was wrestling with with Satan, who was tempting him, etc., and it's fine. By the way, if you notice the things that Satan was tempting with him, if you haven't noticed, they're the same kinds of things that our human mind says to us. Hey, go get wealth, go get this stuff, don't trust God, hey man, can you do this, etc. All the stuff of the human mind. So whether or not you believe it is Satan or you believe it's the human mind, that we walked into this world and lost track of God and now are substituting this human mind of a different creation than how God made us as spirits in the kingdom of heaven, and that we wanted to be the big cheese, and so we come into this world. In this world, we need a support group just as Jesus did. He walked into this world and loses a portion of the awareness of his Father and his oneness with him. He comes out of the desert, and the next thing that's reported in the gospel is that he's at a wedding in Cana. I'm sorry, I'm just going to have to say that he's at a wedding. I might not have that part correct about where it was, but at any rate, not that important. He's at a wedding, and they run out of wine at the wedding. And his mother turns to him and says, they ran out of wine. And Jesus knows what his mother is talking about, because he denies to her that he is meant to do this. She knows. The mother is in touch with the divine. Mary is in touch with the divine. And she knows he is meant to turn the water into wine as the first miracle that is to be done. And she reminds him of it. And he pushes it off. My time has not come yet, woman. Pushes it right off. She, filled with the divine spirit, and then, by the way, the interesting thing in the long run, and for those of you who have been reading our website and our Healing Aspirations and all know, that Jesus had told me that Mary was Mother God. After 2,000 years, Mary is Mother God, making it awareness of it, and the reason that it's not known and why it's still resisted is because of the male influence in the church and in the writing of Scripture, that it was denied to, or Jesus states this about why it's not known. Mary ignores him and says, Stuart, bring those casks over here and put it before him. Support group. And only at this point does Jesus perform the first miracle, turns the water into wine. And the comment is made that that wine is such superiority that that should be served first at the wedding, and the lesser quality of wine, I guess after a little hooched, should be served later on. But this was the quality of the wine, and this was it. He needed his mother as a support group. Second is example. Canaanite woman appears before him and asks him to be able to heal her child. It was her daughter who was at home. And Jesus states to her, and look it up yourself if it's going to be, you have trouble believing that Jesus said this. Jesus said to her, I came here to heal the children of Israel, not their dogs. Yes, he called her a dog. He called her daughter a dog because they were an enemy of Israel, land of Canaan, the Canaanite tribe. They were fighting with Israel, and he turned them aside, and you could see the opinion that he had of them. The woman, incredibly, again touched by the Spirit, in the divine state, because you can't do these things unless you're in the divine state, says to him, with such an understanding of forgiveness of his lostness, doesn't attack him, doesn't call him a schlunkhead, and say anything. She simply says to him, yes, Jesus. But even the dogs get crumbs off the children's table. Even the dogs get crumbs off the children's table. And Jesus looks at her and says, go home. Your daughter's healed. Support group. What did Jesus need support on? A couple of things. Number one, that he was being judgmental. And he feels the quality of godliness in her, which he is out of touch with in the forgiveness area, and that needs attention to it. And he forgives her being an enemy. And indeed later on he is going to be able to say we should pray for our enemies. We should love our enemies rather, and pray for those who persecute us. But at this point she is the one who provides the support to Jesus to make a move in this area. And she is the one that expands his ministry to be for all people, not only for the children of Israel, but for all people. Another example of needing support in order to overcome the attacking nature, the destructive nature of the human mind, which influenced him as well as it influences us. Final example. Jesus is in the Garden of Gethsemane. He knows he's going to be arrested. It's after the Last Supper. And he turns to his Father, and it's obvious he's in conflict. Must I drink from this cup? And he says, no, 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 your will be done, not mine. Has to pray it again. Must I drink from this cup? Must I be arrested? No, no, your will be done, not mine. Still not enough. And he turns now to his disciples, and they fell asleep on him. Thanks a lot. When I need you, look what's happening. You're not there for me. His need at this point for a support group. And he shows it by saying this to them. And he prays for a third time. And at that point, Jesus receives the strength to be able to let God complete the mission that Jesus was meant to accomplish, that he must die in order to accomplish it, but that he also must be able to demonstrate the fact that we are eternal spirit beings. That was his mission. to show us that we are eternal beings. Likewise, that forgiveness is a crucial, crucial role that has to be practiced by it. Well, those are the examples from Scripture. And in the next part, we're going to move on to further examples of why we need a support group.